this afternoon, and he put a great presentation forward, and he's going to open the batting with feeding racing greyhounds. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Mr. John Kohnke.
Thank you very much. Who's been to one of my talks before? So a few people are from Dapto. So who went to the Dapto ones? Okay, good. Now, it's similar talk to Dapto, some changes. Obviously, cobalt's mentioned somewhere in there. Okay, we'll talk a bit about that if you want to. But basically, it's just a general thing on feeding greyhounds, what they need and what you can supply through meat and kibble or whatever. Now, the set of notes over there is pretty comprehensive, and that's got everything I'm going to talk about, plus food, plus ration analysis and lots of other checkers. But I won't go into all those. I've only got, how long have I got? 45 minutes?
Yeah, 45 fine. John, if you just speak up near the microphone.
Okay, 45 minutes, have we? Yes. Okay, right. I won't spend any time looking at. So, racing greyhounds are incredible animals. They have to race at very high speed, and as you know how fast they go. But the basic thing is they need instant energy, and they have an instant energy supply from a thing called creatine phosphate. And the first 3 or 4 seconds of a race, up to 15 seconds, is used that high energy compound. Then they go into muscle sugars and glycogen, and they can actually use fat as well, whereas other racing animals at that speed can't. And 70 k's an hour, of course, but horses can't use fat when they get really high up in their thing because they can't metabolise it big enough. Well, greyhounds can use fat for energy and racing as well. So the nutritional aims is to provide a palatable, low bulk, highly digestible, economical ration. Everyone wants the cheapest ration but the best results, and that's important for racing animals with greyhounds or whatever. Ensure an optimum energy, protein, fat and fibre. Some of these terms may not be familiar to you, but you get the notes, it explains what all these mean and what they do. So we all know about protein and energy. And energy is the energy for exercise. Muscle energy, muscle sugars, thing called glycogen. Fats provide energy, protein provides energy. So a lot of the things, and fibre provides energy by fermentation of hindgut, and then comes back as what's called fatty acids, which then provide energy. So energy is the overall thing, and that's a really limiting factor. If you feed a meat-based diet, you've got no problem with protein content. Don't worry about it. You've got to worry about the energy content. And that's what makes the greyhound run and finish off learn a race. And you don't want too much gut weight. You want a fairly concentrated diet so you don't have a lot of gut weight, because every extra bit of water you add to the dog's diet or whatever thing increases body weight. And also adding lots of dry food that sops up moisture. For every cupful of dry food you feed a greyhound, you get another it takes up an extra cupful of water to digest that dry food. So you add up more weight all the time, and you've just got to keep your weights down within one plus or minus a kilo. You need to make sure you don't have any low levels of calcium, which is one of the most important minerals in greyhound diets because of bone strength, electrolytes, trace minerals and vitamins, vitamin E, vitamin C and other vitamins. Counteract the physical stress of training, and that's very important as well, particularly when a greyhound has been in work for a while. And maintain an active immune response, especially for greyhounds travelling to and from kennels, racing in other kennels and racing on a regular basis. The immune system gets stressed by cortisone release and stress, and then the immunity goes down. They get more sort of infections and injuries. If they get an injury or a cut in their skin, they'll either get an infection a lot easier. Sorry. Now, the energy requirement. Greyhounds, just because they're an athletic dog, they're idling at, you can sort of say they're idling at a higher speed than most dogs. Imagine a Labrador, doesn't idle at any speed, just sits around eating his head off and doesn't do much. But greyhounds are intelligent, they're active, they're sight dogs, they're on the ball all the time, a bit like a thoroughbred racehorse. If you've got a thoroughbred racehorse, which I do a lot of work with, they need a lot more energy than, say, warm blood, one of those dumb bloods. Anybody got dressage horses here? They're real dumb. They take a long time to learn, but they do learn eventually. Greyhounds are on the ball all the time. They're looking for something to do, something to chase. So they need a higher energy maintenance. Also, they don't have a lot of hair, and they've got a leaner body mass, so that they tend to not have any fat insulation in their body for cold weather. And that's a big thing that affects greyhounds, cold weather, because once you get down below 15 degrees, they start losing a lot of energy, which then they sap it away from their racing energy in their muscles. They use their muscle energy up to shiver and maintain their body warmth, and therefore they use a lot more energy that way. High metabolic rate relative to body size and weight, so they've been attuned to racing and running quickly, accelerating fast as compared with other dogs. So they have a higher level of muscle glycogen or sugars in their muscles, and they have a very, very developed pathways to break down sugars anaerobically. That means without the use of oxygen. So they can break it down quite quickly. And as they get fitter in a race, and if train them, they get fitter and give them some hand slips and get them up to speed and distance in the race, they're very efficient at breaking down energy then. And you've got to condition that into the dog. You just can't take them out and run them cold. They run once or twice cold but once they get trained up and you get them regular training, they start getting fitter, they'll use energy more efficiently, won't waste it, and they won't get things like cramping and muscle soreness after racing once they get fitter. And I'm not going into that today. Hyperactive self-exercising greyhounds, that's a bit of a problem with some greyhounds, a bit hyperactive, some bark a lot, run around a lot, running up and down in the yard at home, and they'll burn up energy that way and not be able to use it for racing if they like that right up to the race day. And they have a lot of mental stress as well. You think, oh, why would a greyhound have mental stress? Well, you know, any animals that's fast and trained hard and things like that does have mental stress, which is also a problem with the overall dog's ability to win races. So we have a maintenance energy in the notes for a 30 kilo. Most of the time we run on a 30 kilo greyhound. I mean, bitches a lot lighter, 25 kilo, 27, maybe 28 kilos, and you've got big dogs up to 34, 35 kilos. Once you go above 35 kilos, the injury rate in any dog goes up a lot faster because of the weight and the skeletal structure and the forces on speed of galloping around corners and that, they start getting more injuries over 35 kilos. So bigger dogs tend to have a lot more muscle injuries and bone injuries. But the general energy body function is about 1,700 kilocalories per day. Don't worry about the values, but basically that's the basic energy, what they have to maintain their body on, live every day, so a bit like yourselves, just hanging around doing work, going for a walk, that's sort of basically mainly metabolic energy. Then when you start racing them, you need higher energy if you're racing on a regular basis. If it's very cold weather, a lot of energy is lost through the skin, and they have to generate more heat, so they need more energy. In very hot weather, they use energy up as well a lot from panting. Dogs can't sweat like horses and humans. There's only two animals that sweat in the world, and that's horses and humans. Ladies don't sweat, they perspire, but men sweat, and horses sweat. Greyhounds don't sweat. A little bit on their nose, pads between their ear canals, so they don't really sweat, and they lose their energy by panting. And panting's a very high energy use, a way of losing heat. Their diaphragm's moving a lot, and they use a lot of energy up. And the best way to fuel that is with extra fat in their diet that's very high. But don't give them carbohydrates because they can get too fat on carbohydrates. With fat, they burn up specifically for panting. It's one of the things that the diaphragm actually uses a lot of fat, can use fat. So for exercise, about a 4 to 5% increase. You think that's not very much. Doesn't seem a lot over maintenance. It's not, because you're racing over short distances, but they've got to have the energy in their muscles. The same as a horse in the Melbourne Cup, running in the Melbourne Cup over 3,200 metres. It only uses another 7 to 8% of its total energy diet for that day. So, rightly, I can tell you all the figures in horses, but basically, there's not much more energy they need for the racing like that. As compared to, say, an endurance horse. An endurance horse running over a long distance, or even maybe a coursing greyhound, needs a lot more energy because they're burning it up on a fairly long time scale. Whereas racing and galloping and sprint work is really short-term energy, but you've got to have the energy in your muscles, and that's the problem. If you don't feed them the correct way and keep it there, or working too hard the day before the race, you can actually burn off that energy and they can't replace it. Now, greyhounds and human runners and sprinters can replace their energy within 12 hours, 6 to 12 hours. That's why in the old island coursing days, they can course a greyhound 2 or 3 times a day. Give it a rest in between, they can get enough energy back. They'll eat a bit of food and get it digested, and just a small meals, high energy meals, and they get it back again. Whereas horses, if they run really hard, and in say a rather big race, they don't get all their energy back for 48 hours. They can't take it up quick enough. So if you run a horse within 48 hours from a previous hard race, like a Saturday race you're running on Monday, your horse won't run as well on Monday because it can't get enough energy to replace what it's burned up and run again at the same speed. Whereas greyhounds can. You can see cold weather there, that's big heat loss, and everything below 15 degrees. And if you get a hot day and you haven't got air-conditioned kennels and your dogs are outside, which they used to be, 50 years ago, people didn't have the air conditioning, they really do suffer. So you've got to keep cooling them down, fans on them and all that sort of thing to try to cool them down. Once above that 30 degrees, they really start to burn up energy. Then by panting to keep themselves cool, by panting and evaporating moisture from their lungs to cool their body down. And of course, another thing, there's some work done in America looking at excitable greyhounds. These guys are up on their toes all the time, looking for things to do, barking and running around, hyperactive, bounce on the lead everywhere you take them. They're using an extra 100 kilocalories of energy a day just doing that. And that can really sap their racing energy away, so that then they race at hard race as well, as you know. Now, 1/3 of the energy in a race, which I believe is used to get the dog out of the traps or the boxes. They call them traps in the UK and boxes in Australia, so anyway, photograph as you can see. but basically 1/3 of the energy is used up to the first bend, just getting the speed, getting the animal. You've got a 30 kilogram, a lot of weight to start to accelerate. A lot of the energy is used up to get them to the first bend in a race, and then the rest of us, the energy for the whole race, is just used to keep the dog momentum going. And a lot of dogs don't have any speed at the end because they haven't got any energy left. You get the odd one that has a little bit of speed at the end, but basically most animals, and some videos done in America a few years ago showed that most greyhounds are actually slowing down at the end. The occasional one will get around and sprint ahead. He's been sort of languishing a little bit and he's not running too wide. He can have enough energy to keep going. But a lot of greyhounds are actually slowly down on the speed per second, the speed per minute, the metres per minute, by the end of the race. Now, energy. I told you before, that fuels muscle function, muscle contraction, and relaxation as well. And a lot of greyhounds that cramp, they have a problem now. I don't know if you've had a real chronic cramp, are usually bitches, and it's usually more common on cold nights or those sort of things. You feed a lot of carbohydrates like bread and all that, you'll increase the risk of cramping, and we know that because you're overloading the muscles. But we do think in horses, been some work recently showing there's a muscle enzyme deficiency, and it's a hereditary thing that's passed on through breeds of horses. It's not uncommon in thoroughbreds, it's more common in standardbreds, where the mares, fillies and mares have a problem with releasing muscle energy as they work, and then they suddenly start tying up, and we call it cramping in greyhounds. And the same mechanism we think happens in greyhounds. It's genetically passed on through bloodlines. Now, these greyhounds are fast. They are really fast, and the same as the horses that tie up like that. They're really fast, got big muscles on their arse, they can really push and accelerate along and move very quickly. The problem is that they have this problem where they can't get the energy once they use some of it up. It's a slow release. They've got what we call glycogen-resistant amylase in their muscle cells, and they can't get hold of energy. So they have the energy to contract their muscles, which you know about. They also need energy to relax. And so what happens, they don't have enough energy to relax, and they just start cramping up, and the same happens in greyhounds that cramp badly. Now, some greyhounds cramp only what we call subclinical. They don't actually show really big symptoms. They might slow down towards the end of a race. And those greyhounds usually have hard muscles when you catch them in the catching pen. You feel their muscles. And I used to work with Penrith and a few other racetracks with Reg Hoskins years ago. Quite often these dogs didn't perform very well, and if you grab them in the catching pen and feel their back, top of their muscles along the top of their back and over their muscle, rectus femoris and that, you find it really hard. But by the time you walk them off the track back to the kennels, they've freed up and they're okay. And you wouldn't know they cramp, but they have actually cramped and they haven't performed as well. So that's one sort of thing. In the notes that you've got, there's a bit about subclinical cramping. And the other thing is, and I know that some people here, and there's a couple of guys here from Penrith came and saw me before, where's your fitness book? I've been away and I've been sick and I just haven't finished it. It's quite a nice book on fitness in greyhounds, how to get greyhounds fit, all about what happens in the muscle cells and whatever. It's quite a scientific sort of thing, but it's practical as well. I'm trying to finish it. The big boss lady at home's given me the ultimatum that you either finish that book or you go with the dog in your car, and that's all. But I haven't got around to that. I have to finish it. It's all written, but I've just got over with it. So it's I think it's quite an interesting book on greyhounds and fitness and training in greyhounds, which has been gleaned from world literature over the years. So too much dry food, increased risk of glycogen because of sugary, cramping in some greyhounds, particularly if you feed them bread. But white bread contains a lot of pure carbohydrates and starch. Rice, that sort of thing. If you feed a lot of that extra than what you normally would need, you can increase cramping because you've got too much muscle sugars. And that's what happens in these dogs that are prone to it, because I think they've got a problem with their enzymes in their muscle cells and are more prone to it that way. Proteins, you need some protein obviously to keep the muscles growing and fit and replacement. And then every time a greyhound runs on a racetrack, it burns up muscle protein, ever so little. Certainly long distance animals do. And certainly coursing greyhounds burn up more muscle protein and energy. And for instance, the peak one in horses is the endurance horse that burns up 45% of its muscle sugars and 10% of its muscle protein after a long ride of 100 kilometres or so, or up to 160 kilometres. So you can see there's muscle protein burn as well. That's got to be replaced. Not only to grow the muscles and develop the muscles when you're in training and keep the muscles as they are, but you've got to be able to replace muscle protein that's burned. Fat, high energy, that's very high energy. It contains 8.9 kilocalories of ME per gram, and that's quite a lot as compared with 3.5, the same energy units for protein and carbohydrates. So you can see fat's a high energy booster. You don't give a lot of it. 1 tablespoon of fat has about 17 grams of a tablespoon of lard, or whatever you want to call it, or even cooking oil, or we have one called Energy Gold. You can add that, and that has a lot of energy in a very small amount. Very good for hot weather and excitable dogs, where they burn off extra fat, but extra energy all the time being excited, and one way to replace it is give them extra fat. Only a small amount doesn't make much difference. One tablespoon of fat has the same amount of energy as about 4 or 5 tablespoons, 6 tablespoons of kibble. So therefore you've got a lot of concentration of energy without the extra increase in body weight. For 17 grams, it doesn't make much difference, but 100 grams of kibble could make a big difference to a dog's body weight because you have to absorb water at the same time. Okay, so fibre. What about fibre? People talk about fibre and greyhounds. You feed, some people feed vegetables. We want too much fibre because otherwise you get a lot of shit. I mean, you get it everywhere. It's bulked out the droppings, and above 5%, you get the maximum increase in stools. That's why a lot of these high dry food diets, you buy the really expensive ones, are low, what we call stool residue feeds. They don't pass a lot of droppings because they're just about to digest the whole thing. Very high protein, very high fat, and there's not much residue left after the dog digests, and that's what people want in puppy dogs in townhouses. They don't want too much droppings to clean up, and they like that in greyhounds. But just remember that you've got to have enough water retention in the hindgut. So you haven't got a lot of fibre in the hindgut, you're going to have a dog that dehydrates more easily. And that's what a lot of people find with dry foods, the really high energy, high density dry foods. There's a big increased risk of dehydration in some greyhounds because of hot weather, panting, and they just can't hold enough fluid in their hindgut to replace what they're losing all the time. And a lot of greyhounds don't drink a lot of water either. So people feed vegetables, beans and carrots and peas and all that sort of thing. Not too much potatoes because they actually increase carbohydrate overload, which could lead to cramping. Protein, well, that provides amino acids. Meat sources, meat's the most common source that most people feed. And in Australia, people still feed a lot of meat as a basic because it's reasonably cheap compared with sort of even the dry foods. In America and big kennels like that, they don't feed any meat. It's just too expensive, and it's 4D meat, which means it's dead, dying, debilitated, or diseased, and then the dogs get diarrhea. I worked in a kennel in Boston for a while years ago as a friend, and I know what they call about a kennel blowout. I thought it was a tyre was blown out on the highway, but it's not. A kennel blowout is you've got 70 dogs in one room, in a kennel room, in 2-tiered cages, and they get the shits overnight because of some bad meat. And we were scraping off the ceiling, mate. It was everywhere. You couldn't race the dogs for a week because they all got gastro, and just because they've got a contaminated mafia meat, what we call mafia meat, which is dodgy meat that comes from the people that control the meat industry. Won't talk about that. Happens at other councils around Sydney too, apparently. Require 30 to 35% crude protein on a dehydrated basis. Meat provides a major source in Australia. 700 grams of lean beef is a major source of meat, protein, and therefore you don't need a sort of lower protein dry food if you're going to feed a lot of meat. Dry foods range from 12 to 35%, and that varies. The normal old kibble that we used to feed and the biscuit, the normal breakfast 42 biscuits, about 12% protein. Some up to 17% protein. You get the really high energy, high protein diets, the high fat diets that people buy in bulk to reduce the bulk of the ration. They have up to 35% protein. There's nothing wrong with that, but too much protein, if the excess goes into the hindgut, it ferments and produces heat and can make your dog pant more as well. And the same thing happens in horses. So they can digest a limited amount of protein efficiently, but too much, they're just wasted, and it costs you a lot of money. Protein's the most expensive part of the diet is protein. Fat's cheap. Carbohydrates are cheap, protein's expensive, good quality protein. And too much protein limits performance. There's a study done in Gainesville in Florida looking at protein levels in greyhounds. It was actually done in greyhounds, and they showed there that if you're above 30% protein total ration, you've got a problem. It can affect their performance. Why? Because it's interfering with energy uptake, it's overloading the hindgut, causing heat production, massive internal heat in the dog. The dog starts to pant more and therefore loses energy that way. So it's actually energy sapping to the dog's system if you have too much protein. Then you've got omega oils, you've got fatty acids and oils, and the ratio offers them is 1 to 1.35 in greyhounds. And fish oils are added to these as well for anti-inflammatory fatty acids, for soreness, anti-inflammatory for dogs who've got injuries. It helps, and it only works with dogs. It doesn't. I mean, people add to horse feeds, and that doesn't really do a lot in horses. We don't think. Nobody's ever proven it. Greyhounds and dogs, certainly adding fish oils, salmon oil, cold water salmon oils, and things like that does help. And we have a product with it in, and everyone likes it because it seems to help them with soreness. If you have a lot of dehydration of greyhounds, again, adding extra fat, and this is a greyhound slide I took years and years ago when I was working with Reg Hoskin. You can see he's got a few other kennel sores on him as well. Everyone blames milk for that, and it can be if it's very rich, but a lot of the thing is it's too much protein in the diet in the first place, and they overheat their bodies. People say, oh, you feed them this supplement and it cooks them, you know, and they get overheated and they start to boil their blood. It's a bit of a fallacy, but basically too much protein and richness in the diet will cause them to overheat, and therefore they start high body temperature and they start getting skin conditions and sort of losing hair, panting more, trying to get rid of it, don't run very well. So this greyhound's fairly dehydrated, as you can see, and giving fat. The standard treatment for that I use if you've got a greyhound like that is just a dehydrated, tucked up sort of greyhound, comes back, his coat's not real good. I'd give him, say, about 3 tablespoons, 4 tablespoons of fat, just lard or chicken fat. Don't use boiled and like cooked fat like dripping, because it's dangerous, because it damages the fat and it blocks up the liver and has damage to the liver, greyhound's liver eventually. So anything like meat trimmings with fat off the meat and lard, a little bit of cooking oil up to 30 to 40 mils, that will give a really good lot of water, because fat actually digests. When it gets digested, it produces water as well. So every 100 grams of fat you wouldn't add that much because the dog would be fat as a mud. You get 107 grams of water. So it actually helps dehydration as well, and it helps burn that energy up, gives more energy. It's cool energy, so it doesn't actually overheat the dog, so they actually start to rehydrate again. So 2 ways of doing it with fat: go into water as it gets burned up, and within about 4 days that dog wouldn't be as dehydrated as he appears to be there. Now, bone minerals are very important as well. So the most important one's calcium, as you can understand, because the meat is very low in calcium. 700 grams of beef, just lean beef, only has 84 milligrams of calcium total in it. It's very low in calcium, high in phosphorus, as you can imagine, meat. And you need in greyhound about 4,000 to 5,000 milligrams a day. So you've got to add it to the diet. Some dry foods will add calcium to it. The newer ones, the higher energy ones, will have calcium in it. One's made for greyhounds. There's a lot of them around now, you know, the Black Hawks and all that, they're made for greyhounds, and or the other breeds, brands are made for greyhounds. They actually have extra calcium added to it compared with ordinary dogs, because greyhounds have a higher demand because of bone stress. So they need more calcium. Then you can add a calcium supplement. Any calcium supplement you add to a greyhound, you should add vitamin D with it, because vitamin D is very important for calcium uptake and regulation. And greyhounds in a kennel don't get enough sunlight, and therefore they need vitamin D in their diets, and the calcium supplement should have vitamin D. And it's most important to have calcium in the diets of young greyhounds when you're breaking them in and working them, because that's when their bones are responsible for developing and getting stronger. They respond to training and what we call loading. So if you're running around a circle track in a greyhound and you don't get enough calcium, high risk of giving shin soreness and broken metacarpals and things like that if you don't have enough calcium in the diet, because their bones need to be strengthened in proportion to the amount of speed they're doing and the weight loading. When a greyhound's going around a corner, when they're going up a straight, a study in America by a bloke called Robert Gillette showed that it's about double their body weight on the leading foreleg as they gallop when they're running around a corner, up the straight, about double their body weight. So a 30-kilo dog is anything from 45 to 60 kilos standing on that front leg going up the straight. When he comes to a corner and starts a circle, depending on the radius of the circle, that can be magnified 5 to 7 times or up to 10 times. So a massive lot of weight going around circles because of centrifugal force. So they need to have really strong bones and they need to be adapted to do that. Otherwise they will break, and that's why we get shin soreness and metacarpals that break. So they call quarter bones and things like that in America. There are all different terms for everything, and they get broken very easily. And you know about shin soreness and greyhounds. Phosphorus, need a fair bit of that, but that mainly comes from meat and dry foods. You usually don't have to add a lot of phosphorus to the diet. So most calcium supplements are made for greyhounds have higher calcium, less phosphorus. They have some phosphorus, you don't need a lot of phosphorus, otherwise it will just reduce the calcium content of the food. Magnesium, yes, mainly in dry foods. Again, magnesium is usually quite common in dry foods. It's part of the dry food, and the cereal base they use in dry food has a lot of magnesium in the grain, and that's usually enough, although a calcium supplement should have some magnesium just in case they do it. They don't sweat it out like horses do, and things like that, because they don't sweat. But they do need magnesium. Organic magnesium is used, and we have, as you know, we have a product called Gold Focus, Splitter Gold Focus, which is very popular for nervy dogs. Give it every day, double dose for 4 or 5 days. It should settle them down. If you don't settle them down, sell them to somebody else. but basically it does work really well for that. Vitamin A and D required for calcium. And one of the things I was just going to show you about centrifugal force, and this is where I said about bone loading, and this is what causes shin soreness and metacarpal breakage in practice, is the centrifugal force that's going around a corner, that's relative to the radius of the body weight of the dog. And so you've got the body weight of the dog, so say a 34 kilo big dog, a really big dog, and he's going really quickly around a corner like maximum speed, and then you square that, so that's really high level, and you divide it by the radius of the track. So it's so many metres, and you divide it and get an amount of pressure going, what we call centrifugal force, and that can be quite a lot. So if you've got a very tight track that's not banked, where the dog can't lean into the track and go around without too much centrifugal force, if you could purposely or develop a track that the dog could run around a corner perpendicular to the track, and then he's leaning over so much that his legs are perpendicular, showing a diagram in the middle, you wouldn't have any centrifugal force because he's actually keeping his weight there. The dog's actually being held up on the track by the opposite weight that holds him there by the centrifugal force. But a lot of tracks don't have really good banking, so the dog's got a massive lot of force on him trying to push him to the side of the track all the time, which increases bone strength. And it's most common in heavy, young, fast greyhounds that haven't been adapted to racing speed. So going around corners, you can see they're just hanging on by their toes. The two toes, all greyhounds in the world run to the left, so it's always the left inside two toes on the left foot, and the right foot tend to have the problem with stress on the bones. That the metacarpals are very thin, and they actually bend in a small, early on in training in a young dog, when you break them in, the bones can actually bend. And if they bend too much, obviously they fracture. So they can what we call microfractures on the surface, then they fracture right through and you get a broken shin bone. But basically, with adaptation by running around corners, not as much harder corners. And what I normally do is slip them half around a corner for a while, up to the upper straight, then take them a bit further around the corner and slip them again, so they don't have that maximum speed around the corner all the time, and you reduce the risk of shin soreness dramatically in dogs if you do what we call progressive loading techniques, which is important. And people like Alan Wheeler used to have long track, long runs, and they run up and down and they turn around the other end and come back. In America, a lot of the breeders have what we call half moon tracks, and they run, the tracks actually bend to the left, the actual runs outside the back of the kennels bend to the left in a big sweeping curve, and the young pups run around and they're running the same distance, they're going to the left all the time, running around these curves, and they actually condition their bones right from the start. They have hardly any problems in those kennels with chin soreness and broken bones, because the dogs are conditioned right from when they start running around corners and they run and back, they're running around at speed, chasing each other and having a good time, and tend to load their bones naturally because the yards have been designed to do that, and they don't have so many problems. So you can see the centrifugal force going around a corner, right on those toes, and when they're sort of leaning up. So the ultimate would be to have that line, that dotted line down the middle at 90 degrees to the track surface, and then there's not so much centrifugal force. But the more the greyhound leans upwards and can't go around a corner sort of at 90 degrees to the surface, that's when the stress starts, okay? Then you get the milkiness in the bones on the side over here. You can see this is just a diagram, and that's the two left-hand bones. And what I've done here, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. And obviously about shin soreness, you feel them there. Check them every day when they're young pups for heat. Ice pack them, back off to circle work for a week or so, give them a calcium supplement, you can reduce the risk of it quite dramatically that way, of course. This is rickets in a greyhound. These are some pups I looked at years ago with Ridge one day, and the whole litter had it. They were kept in the dark in a great big kennel, in a chicken shed, fed chicken meat, because the owner was a chicken guy. And he just fed them chicken meat through the door and didn't let them run outside at all, and they all got rickets. You can see they've got quite bent legs. Not much good for anything except riding horses, perhaps, I don't know. But they had to all be put down because he just broke off at the wrists all the time and couldn't run. So, it's just pity because he left them in the dark, no vitamin D, no calcium from the chicken, and that was it, mate. So the whole litter had to be destroyed, a number of litters actually, eventually. Trace minerals, I won't go through all of these, but they're all in the notes. So copper, zinc, manganese, what they all do, okay. Selenium is very important, and iodine for energy metabolism and growth and bone and the muscle development. And selenium is very important for muscle function and antioxidant function in muscle, along with vitamin E. So selenium is often low in meat in Australia. And even the cereal breads and all that are low in selenium unless it's added. So that's important to have. Chromium, a lot of people add chromium to rations, and we do in our supplements because it's used for glucose control, muscle development. Probably the big one at the present time is a thing called cobalt, which you've probably heard about if you read the papers. and if you're certain trainers in Melbourne, you're really writing about it right now. What does cobalt do? Well, cobalt has an effect on the blood system. In humans, it has a different effect than it does in horses and dogs. In humans, it acts like EPO, and you all know about EPO, and bike riders and people by the name of Armstrong. He started using cobalt as well. Once he got rid of EPO, he started using cobalt himself. So in all about cobalt, it's effective like EPO. It increases your red cell synthesis up to a very high level of red cells in response to exercise. In humans, in horses and greyhounds, we don't think it does that. The same thing, it has an increased production of red cells, but it also keeps more red cells in their spleen. And the spleen, in horses and greyhounds, they have a big increase in splenic, what we call splenic reserve of red cells, and cobalt has an effect on that. Also, it's important for muscle strength as well. So there's a few effects of it, okay? But those effects, particularly increasing the red cells and also the ability of oxygen to be used in red cells and all that because of the B12 in them and the synthesis of red cells, it all means increased performance. So more people are worried about it, and you know there's a thing in it. Can you get it from diet? That's what everyone asks me. B12, it contains 4.43% cobalt. So it's not a lot in B12, although it's essential. It's part of, like hemoglobin's got iron in it, B12's got cobalt in the middle. It's fairly toxic as a chemical. Only about 20%, if you give a ration, say you had a supplement with cobalt, only about 20% of that cobalt's going to be actually absorbed into the dog's body. You excrete it through the urine and in the droppings, in the excess, and they can pick it up in the urine, obviously, you get enough. But really, when you look at amount, and I do some calculations because everyone rings me up the day after the big 100 micrograms per mil of cobalt was declared, and you know, we're using your supplement that's got 100 milligrams of cobalt per kilo in it. Well, you're only using 500 grams in 500 doses in a kilo because it's concentrated, so you're not getting very much cobalt. And a dog, if you look at the amount of urine excretion, a dog is about 500 mils a day on average. Now, that's in a big greyhound. Some greyhounds probably won't do that, but if you get a dog that wets in his kennel, you realise a fair bit. So when you dilute that down a whole day, it's so small, it's less than 0.2 of a microgram per mil, and that's way less than that's oral cobalt, because it can't absorb it, only 20% is absorbed. Whereas you give it by injection, and I worked out this morning, one certain injection on the market that people use, if you gave 5 mils of it, you'd be sort of really on the limit in a grain if you gave it within 2 hours of a race, 2 to 3 hours of a race. So because it'll all be excreted, it doesn't get absorbed. What doesn't get absorbed gets excreted pretty rapidly through the kidneys, and not all. And it's got a bit of B12 in, which is not really a lot to the low, but it could be overall because it's got cobalt in it as well. Silicon, like we use that for joints. This is one typical sort of young greyhound that hasn't had enough joint care like copper, zinc, silicon, and that in its joint it's got what we call OCD, and you've probably heard of OCD in greyhounds, big sort of bulky sort of young pups that run around a lot. They'll burn their joint, wear their joints out prematurely because they don't have enough good nutrients to develop their joint cartilage, and that's a big problem in some pups. If you just feed just ordinary dry foods and nothing else, you won't get enough of these nutrients normally, particularly if they're not made for greyhounds or growing puppies. So the cheaper ones, mate, you've got a big recipe for problems. So we make a product for growing puppies and bitches, as you know. Vitamin A, vitamin's very important, vitamin E. Well, vitamin E is probably one of the vitamins, I think, I haven't banned it yet, but I'm only joking, is one of the things that does help greyhounds perform better, in the fact that if they're deficient, they won't run very well at all. It's not going to make them into, you know, any better than they can genetically run, but if you have a deficiency of vitamin E in the diet, which is usually in meat, cooked foods, if you freeze meat, you damage the vitamin E, totally knock it out. So if you buy a lot of frozen meat, and you buy it cheaply and then you thaw it out, the vitamin E gets destroyed by the freezing process. So the frozen meat, when you thaw it, doesn't have any vitamin E, not that it's got a lot in it. So vitamin E is one of the things you add to the diet. About 50 to 100 international units per day is about what we recommend. But there's also a limit, and you can't go above about 450 in a 30 kilo greyhound, about 450 milligrams. The studies done in America showed if you do that, your dogs will start to slow down a lot. And the same with vitamin C. A lot of people have vitamin C every day. If you add just the 250 milligram tablet of vitamin C, you've got no hassles. Greyhounds make vitamin C in their liver every day, about 1,200 milligrams from glucose, so they don't really need vitamin C. Well, we do. If we don't get vitamin C, we get scurvy, as you know, Captain Cook found out. But greyhounds do make their own vitamin C, and the problem is if you add too much vitamin C in the diet, you cut down the production in the liver for vitamin C, and that has other side effects on something else that's produced in the liver. So the whole liver balance is broken down and the dog doesn't run. So the studies have showed if you feed 1,000 IU of vitamin C a day on a daily basis, the dog will just go right off. They just don't perform. You can give more vitamin C the night before the race if you want to, orally, like 1,000 milligrams in a tablet. And that, the only thing you can cause that time is diarrhea if you give too much of it. But it doesn't, it helps a little bit as an antioxidant along with vitamin E and selenium, organic selenium, all that sort of thing. But generally, 250 milligrams is about a limit you can do without causing any major upset. So some people do that in dogs that are stressed, immune system, things like that. Okay, in the notes I've got, it's all written down there what the limits are and how much you should add. How much longer we got to go? 5 minutes, okay. Amino acids, everyone asks about branch chain, liver stress, methionine, that's what people used to use methionine, the old methionine tablets. 3 tablets a day for bitches with cystitis. It acidifies the urine. It's good for recovery. Branch chain amino acids, we have a product with that in it, and it really helps in muscle recovery and muscle repair. Creatine, everyone asks about creatine. What's that do? Well, it's a high energy source, a very high energy source. That's the one I told you about that's actually used in the first 4 to 15 seconds in a race. So it's half the race time in some greyhounds over a 30-second race. But creatine, people give it to greyhounds, and in humans it works a different way, and it seems to be useful. In greyhounds, people used to add creatine every day and say, oh, it's going to increase the energy in the muscles. It's got to be, it doesn't really do that. And the only way to use creatine is to load it in small doses over a 24-hour period, like 5 or 6 doses of it slowly, rather than one big dose. Because a big dose doesn't get absorbed, but small doses tend to add up and add up and add up a little bit, and that actually increase the muscle stores of creatine. So your dogs might spread out the boxes a bit better, but it's not a panacea that everyone thought it was, and years ago people were using it. You can buy it about that. Glutamine, well, that's mainly in supplements for the gut rehab and all that sort of stuff. Electrolytes, we all know about sodium chloride. Doesn't need a lot because greyhounds don't sweat, so don't need a lot of sodium, and that's why you shouldn't use horse greyhound electrolytes on your greyhound, or horse electrolytes on your greyhounds, because they don't need the salt. Otherwise they tend to drink a lot of water, and when they drink a lot of water, they put on more body weight, they run like busted, whatever, you know, they just can't carry the weight. Increase their risk of bone stress and all that sort of thing. Potassium, very important electrolyte in greyhounds because they lose it very quickly in nervous, barking, and also in pain. A chronic pain state in a greyhound with carrying a muscle injury, its potassium excretion will be increased dramatically, and therefore they'll start not to perform and dehydrate very quickly. Magnesium, all the citrates and bicarbonates and lactates are used in electrolyte mixes, but they don't really do a lot. And you've got to be careful about bicarbonate, obviously. But you know, people give pre-rehydration drinks before a race to try to recover from a trip on the travel. If you're traveling a long way in the hot weather, give them a little drink, a bit of salts and that. There's lots of those liquid ones you can use. They seem to help. In the UK, as you know, they've banned giving any electrolytes in the kennel care area. You're not allowed to use anything except pure water. But you know, it's a law. They reckon they don't do anything, so they said you can't use it anymore. I mean, I think in Australia with the heat we have here, it's probably a good idea to have something, but people don't often use it. So water, very important. They need about 2 cupfuls of water a day, just 2 cupfuls of water, drinking water to replace what they've lost from panting and general body use, okay? 2 more minutes. So a dog like this, you see, is a black dog. He gets hotter quicker, and he gets to a stage that if he loses water and electrolytes, his body content of electrolytes and water is about the same. So if he pants, he loses some water and electrolytes by dribbling out his saliva as he pants. He loses both, and his body remains the same. This sort of dog won't drink. You can stick a hose down his nose, up his nose. I'm talking about a horse with a nose tube. Stick a hose in the mouth, and they won't drink any water. So because their balance is still there. They don't feel thirsty. They don't go and drink in the bar on Saturday afternoon just because they want to drink. They don't drink it unless they're thirsty dogs. So you can't get them drinking. And when they cool down a bit and you give them electrolytes, then they'll start getting a higher electrolyte level, and the body says, oh shit, we've got too much electrolytes, let's take some water, so then they'll drink quite happily, okay? But as a vet, I've seen a lot of dogs. I've been a vet for 40 odd years now, and mainly horses, and I love greyhounds, that's my passion. I had a couple once, but they were sort of slow bundles. But anyway, that's how it goes. Well, one race first up at Penrith. When Beck's race went to Penny, it ran into ran wide on the first bend and ran into the light post. You know, the big steel post? Didn't do a lot of good. And then the other one had 8 seconds in a row because he's one of those, I'll go the front way ahead and then you can see if you can catch me, but while I'm seeing where you are, I'll slow down and you can catch me in the quarter every time. She Came second 8 times in a row, 2 by a nose and 1 by a half a head, so I gave it away. Feeds, I can quickly talk one more slide, mate, and then we'll go and finish, okay? I've got some more slides on different feeds, and I'll just quickly go over some now. They're in the notes if you want to get that. Everything's in all about different types of meat, all is there. What can you feed, what can't you feed? It gives you substitution ratio between horse and beef in the notes, so it has it there. But 2 or 3 things about beef. That's the one that's the most stable one that people get access to. Lean beef, with 10% fat, what we call lean beef, and that's a good sort of basic meat base for your diet, 700 grams, 5 to 700 grams of beef, plus dry food. That's the basis that most people use. A study done in America about 15 years ago showed that for best performance, greyhounds sort of should really have about 50% of their diet as meat. They seem to run better on some meat in their diet rather than no meat. Now, some of the meat, dry food manufacturers actually extrude meat in with their dry food, like chicken and beef, and they extrude the meat. So the meat is still there, but it's being cooked in the extruder. And so, you know, some meat in the diet seems to be better for most greyhounds. The only problem is you get the odd bloodline of greyhounds gets what we call a red meat allergy. It happens a lot in German shepherds and those sort of bigger dogs. And they have a red meat allergy. If they eat a lot of beef, they'll get diarrhea really easily. And there are some bloodlines of greyhounds that do that. So if you ever got a greyhound that you feed it, say, 700 grams of lean beef and it gets really loose droppings, I'd be backing off the beef and probably feeding a bit of lamb or something like that for a while and mixing it as a shandy or something like that to try to get reduce the risk of it. Horse meat, well, in South Australia, banned horse meat, you can't use it anymore. And that's so, the big thing is horse meat is very low in fat, not too many fat racehorses around when they go to the knackery where they go, and therefore it's very low in fat as compared to that's about 2% fat in it. So you've got to add the horse meat. There's less digestible protein. The horse meat protein is less digestible than beef protein. The studies showing that. And again, red meat allergy. They get more and more allergy and diarrhea to horse meat than any other meat you can give a greyhound. So you've got to be a bit careful if you're going to change over. So if you're changing over from beef to horse meat, do it slowly. Shandy it until you get to the horse meat. So you go, and you've got to probably add extra fat. For every 250 grams of horse meat, should add an extra tablespoon of oil or fat to the diet to balance up the fat levels. Otherwise, they won't get enough fat to survive. Chicken meat, low in iron, that's the biggest problem with chicken. And you feed chicken, go on to chicken meat, and you feed it every day for 3 weeks, your dogs will become anemic because they can't get enough iron. It only has 0.6 milligrams of iron per 100 grams of chicken meat, as where beef has got 2.3. So you can see the big differences. 4 times iron in chicken, in beef than there is in chicken. So adding beef, you get natural iron uptake, whereas that needs for dogs to keep their blood cells. Soft muscles, Alan Wheeler said, I don't like chicken, they give them soft muscles. Nobody's ever really said that before or proven it, but you know, it's one of the old things. High bacteria count. The big problem with chicken meat is salmonella on the skin. And never ever mince whole chickens with the skin on, leave them in the fridge and feed them next day, even if it's just chilling it, because it has a lot of risk of getting salmonella in your dogs. And you know about chicken meat and restaurants and having chicken sandwiches 2 days old, you like to suffer for it. So be careful about chicken, especially if you mince the skin. Take the skin off and mince the chicken up and keep it clean. Mince it as you use it rather than mincing it up in a big lot, and even freezing it and thawing it. The time it takes a thaw, over 6 to 12 hours in a big lump of chicken meat, you can have salmonella breeding away in there and causing problems with your dogs. Okay, kangaroo meat, very good for getting to jump out the boxes, everyone knows that. The thing is that it's very low in fat, it's even lower than horse meat, and therefore you've got to add fat to kangaroo meat. It's quite well, it's lower, slightly lower protein digestibility. The studies have shown that in humans even, but it's good red meat. It's got iron in it, and everything else, just like beef has. But it is lower in fat, and you've really got to add fat again. As I said, the 200 grams of thing, you've got to add up to a tablespoon of fat to balance it up. Lamb, of course, you can get fat lambs and thin lambs, and not too many people use it because it's too damn expensive. But if you've got sheep and you use them, use those. Just be careful about using boiled rib cages, because you get the sharp bones and they brittle in the dog's mouth, they chew them. And so lamb can be used. A lot of people use lamb. It's the most low allergy meat you can get to greyhound, and there's a lot of diets for other dogs on lamb and rice. If you've got a dog that's a bit sensitive in the gut, and he's had some antibiotics and he's got a bit of diarrhea and you want to settle him down, well, you just give him some lamb flaps and cut the meat off, and just give him that and a bit of rice, steamed rice, and you'll find it'll settle down his gut over about a week. It'll be a lot better. Fish, well, if you can afford it, well, it's low fat, high energy. high protein and small sharp bones. Okay, so we'll have to finish there because we've got a little bit reduced time, and if there's any question we can answer those. So in the notes I've got, there's all the other meats. If you go through here, we're going to talk about extrusion. Well, probably this slide. Is it better to feed meat minced or cubed? Okay. Study shown in dogs, and one limited one in greyhounds in America in Gainesville, showed that slightly the coarser mince is better than fine mince. It gets digested better. Fine mince just tends to go through the small bowel a lot faster, and that. So coarser mince are better, and also cubed mince. It's a natural way dogs eat. I mean, a dog, might be worried about how fast your dog eats their meal. You get a given in front of the greyhound, and whap, it's gone. You're looking around, and then you get these little poofs of poodles that take a whole day to eat a little bit of meat because they're slow buggers. Should be shot and given another one. But the thing is that dogs rely on digestive enzyme release by taking the food fast. That's their natural way. When you're in a big pack and you kill something, you've got to get your fill real quick. So they've been developed over millions of years to eat quickly. And the quicker your greyhound eats his meat and his food, the best enzyme release he's going to get, because that's a natural way they've been doing it, and that's how they've adapted. So cube meat not as good because greyhounds never chew it. If it's too big and cubey, they'll vomit up and have another go at it later. But the certainty is that cube meat's not as well digested. Freezing doesn't affect the meat. Yes, I told you it knocks the vitamin E out. It ruptures the meat cells a little bit as well, which is good for digestion in some ways, but you have a negative effect of the vitamin E being destroyed. Meat raw or cooked? Well, raw meat's best, because cooked meat, if you cook meat a lot, and particularly if you put it in an oven and cook it like a roast, you damage the meat protein and the fat, that it can actually cause liver disease in the long term. Now, I know little poodles and that have that at home, but they're only 10-year-old and they drop dead and have heart attacks and crap like that. You don't worry about it. We're looking at racing dogs when they're up to 4 years of age, you've got to run. I wouldn't cook their meat. Steaming, it's better. Stews are great. I used a lot of stews years ago when I worked with Red. We used to use stews of dogs that were a bit off and want a bit of rest. Just give them a vegetable meaty stew for a week. Have a rest in the kennel, cleans them out, sets them back to normal again, and they're right. They can digest it really easily. But you only cook it at 100 degrees in a stew, a little bit hotter. You're not boiling it, and not roasting it, which is bad news, or microwaving the guts out of it. Offal meat, are they safe? Well, they're fairly safe if you don't feed soy. It's just not very common now, of course. Diarrhea, combination of offal meat. A lot of people ask me, I went to the UK, and I go to talks over there on greyhounds. I've been writing for magazines over there for years, and they all use tribe. I don't know why they use tribe. I reckon it's the best way to be upset with your wife. You don't have to go on one of these dating sites and try to dump her and have an affair on site. You just boil tribe in your kitchen every day for a week. Your wife walks out, it stinks like hell. It's got nothing in it. I mean, it's just slime, but they love it. So I think it might be a way of getting rid of their wives, to boil tribe, but it's got nothing in it. So that's an offal meat. Dry food, the total diet, questionable again. You read these companies and you've got to feed all your greyhounds this total bag. They don't have to feed them any meat. It's the old times. Tell you what, overall studies have shown the dogs don't run as well. They might have the odd dog that does very well, and I know some vets recommend that they sell the dry food to the people when they come in the clinic because it's expensive and you get more money out of it. But really, they've shown in a big study in America, in Gainesville, a big greyhound study there again in Gainesville, where the setup is that really total dry food diets. Some dogs just don't run as well on that if they change out of that. Meat, fat or vegetable oil, yes. Which is best? Well, vegetable oil has polyunsaturated fatty acids. You add salmon oil to it, that has the coznoi for painkiller. Meat fat, this has just ordinary fat in it. It's still available, still good for the dog. I don't use, as I said before, fat from that's been roasted because it's damaged. But lard, lard is really just pork fat that's been cooked boiled, and the lard is just boiled off, and the lard sets hard. So it's not been damaged by cooking because it's boiled off, okay, at 100 degrees rather than 250 degrees in an oven roasting it. So it's quite safe. Chicken fat, all those sort of things are quite useful. All energy sources, and there's not much difference between them. Okay, and then I had a whole lot of slides on everything. A bit about adding meat, energy levels. They showed in a big study in America you need about 42% carbohydrates, 33% fats, and about 25% protein for optimal performance. On the normal diet you feed your dogs, if you're using, say, 700 grams of lean beef and some kibble and a bit of a biscuit for between in the morning with a milk, you're going to almost approximate that ratio. I tried to write the book and I did a first edition of it with a lot of calculation at the back, and I got people ringing me out, so that doesn't work out. I then went back and found I made a slight mistake in the calculations late at night with a laptop, but it doesn't bloody work out very well either. So I'm working on that. It's work in progress, and in the notes you've got today, I updated the last 3 pages for anyone who's read the old book and couldn't work it out. I've actually worked it out again. So it's a bit better, but no matter if you start feeding meat, you know, if you feed something like 25% protein dry food and 15% fat and made of carbohydrate, you know, cereal grains, like say Cockrice Working Dog or one of the others, and the Black Hawk stuff, they are perfect. They've got a perfect ratio almost. And you'll see that in the notes I've given you. They're almost perfect, that ratio, as fed hot, as fed totally. Okay. Once you start putting meat in it, you stuff the ratio because you don't get enough carbohydrates. So I'm trying to work out, I've worked out you've got 350 grams of meat and half and half, 50% meat, 50% dry food. You've got a really good ratio. Then people ring up and say, but the dog's put on a hell of a lot of weight in the dry food. Well, what you do is you only feed the dry food at a lower rate while you've got him in training, and then the last 2 nights you add a bit more. So I'm working on that now, but you've got to be careful of those crampers, those sort of big bitches with big muscles that they've got a cramping gene in them. They could be sensitive to that sort of thing. Okay, thank you very much.